Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
Vince Coglianese.
Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 4:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program this hour, Rob Bluey joins us from the Daily Signal. We will discuss tonight's debate, which you can hear live right here on WMAL beginning at 9 p.m. We've got the whole broadcast right here, that ABC debate. And Rob is going to be present tonight at that debate in Pennsylvania, so we'll get an advanced preview with him, find out what the accommodations are like. Patty Morin is joining us at 5 o'clock. She's the mother of Rachel Morin, who was the victim of an illegal alien who attacked her, murdered her. Patty testified today before Congress. I'm going to share some of that audio with you coming up here in a moment. And Curtis Houck is here from Newsbusters at 5:30. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, the families of Americans who have been killed by illegal aliens during the Biden-Harris administration, they've been testifying before Congress today, the House Judiciary Committee hosting them. And it is heartbreaking. Number of, actually, very emotional events taking place today in Congress, including as the 13 American service members killed at Abbey Gate were posthumously awarded the top congressional medal today in the Congress. So a lot of very emotional events today heading into this debate this evening, where the future of our country is very much at stake. I think a lot of us enjoy the spectacle of the debate, and we want to see our guy win. In that case, in our case, is Trump. We want to see him easily defeat Kamala Harris in spoken combat. But the future of the country, critically important. And we already have an unfortunate understanding of what it would look like if Kamala Harris was given more power. And that was reflected today in this hearing with family members of fallen Americans testifying about what happened to them, what happened to their loved one, and how they'd like it to stop, and for no more Americans to be killed by foreign nationals here in the country illegally. Among the people who testified, there was a woman who, let me see if I can find this. Her name is April Aguirre. She is a crime victims advocate. She is a daughter of Mexican immigrants. And she was speaking today on behalf of an 11-year-old girl, Fox News reports, who authorities say was brutally raped and murdered at the hands of an illegal immigrant, and how the Democrats' policies are giving, quote, good migrants a bad name. How often have we heard that? Where legal immigrants say, this is not this. Stop saying immigrant when you refer to illegal aliens in the country. Stop it, because legal immigrants, the guys who did it the right way, demonstrated their ability to be here, that they wouldn't become a ward of the state. They're not going on welfare. They're here to contribute. They want to join communities. They want to assimilate. They want to be American. That is a very different category of human being than someone who comes in illegally, obviously. The media will completely blur the distinction, but it is a very real one. And you are lying if you blur that distinction. You're lying by omission. So April Aguirre, today, testifying by before the House Judiciary Committee, was sitting alongside the mothers who had lost their children. And she was saying that she's ashamed of what the Biden-Harris administration has done to the country by opening the borders, including criminals who she said are wolves in sheep's clothing. She spoke up for 11-year-old Maria Gonzalez, a migrant who was living in Houston with her father when authorities say an illegal immigrant from Guatemala entered her home and killed her, stuffed her under her father's bed in a plastic bag in a laundry basket. 11-year-old child. Maria was so covered in bruises, she said, that she had to go and shop for a funeral dress for her to cover the damage that the man did to her. Maria lost her fingernails in her fight against a grown adult man, an 11-year-old girl. And she's a migrant child, Aguirre detailed to the committee. Now, that testimony apparently led a Democrat by the name of Veronica Escobar to claim that this woman April Aguirre, and the mothers who were testifying were being, quote, exploited by Republicans. She said that they're being exploited by her political opponents. They're speaking to the United States Congress. They're talking about something that actually happened, affected them in their lives. So here's this exchange. Listen to Congresswoman Veronica Escobar try and suggest, like, dismissed all the testimony out of it. Oh, you're just being exploited. You have no idea what you're saying. You have no agency. You can't piece together what actually happened to you. You leave the policy stuff to us. Just the condescending nature of this. And listen to the way the women react. In particular, you'll hear from April Aguirre here, who gives this congresswoman a piece of her mind.
What is happening today at this committee hearing, where we have colleagues who are exploiting people's pain for political purposes. And unfortunately, that's what's happening today.
I don't feel exploited in any way. As a matter of fact, I find it very interesting that all 5 minutes for both of your testimonies on the left have not had any questions for us up here, but instead a speech. And I will tell you, I'm getting tired of hearing about the most comprehensive border bill, which did nothing for for American citizens.
It's insulting that you would say that to these families, that you would make an assumption that they're being used or exploited anyway. But I will do is I'll give you my number. It's 281-673-0736. And
this is unreal. This is April. This is April now.
Like a phone call from you to see what you can do to help these families, because every single week I get bombarded with calls from victims all over the United States. But I'm just a small person with a small foundation that helps people here locally in Houston and Harris County. Not one time when her daughter was murdered and I was helping her navigate the criminal justice system did one Democrat call me to offer their assistance. It was only Republicans, and I am an independent. I vote both ways. So it's insulting. No, please don't speak over me, because I'm still talking.
Get her, girl.
Okay.
I'm not done. I have the mic. I have the floor. I have the floor. If you want to answer me, you ask.
The chair has the time, and the witness is allowed to respond.
So I'm asking, you said some very broad statements. It's insulting. These people lost loved ones. They lost children.
Yeah.
And we want to see a difference. We may not understand everything that's going on, but I assure you that we're not being used in any way. And if today somebody calls that number that wants to help from any side of the aisle, we want solutions.
That's what I just talked about.
I'm still talking. So please don't.
I just talked
don't
about.
Make an assumption. Don't make an assumption that we're being used. That is insulting.
The time belongs to the chair.
Exploited.
The chair now yields.
Insulting.
The chair yields the remainder of his time to the gentleman from Texas.
Amazing, just amazing, and good for. Have you noticed this has been a trend, too? I think witnesses who are done with Democrats are just speaking up to, like, no, stop it. Stop. You're utter garbage. And the lengths to which they're willing to go. Congresswoman Escobar willing to be like, yeah, look, yeah, you lost a loved one. Fine. You're just being exploited. You're being exploited as if they have no agency, that they didn't want to be there of their own volition, that they didn't have something to say, they didn't have something they want to get off their chest. They don't want to see the country get better. They're just stooges, essentially, who are being used, who are told what to say. It's just awful. One of the witnesses is Patty Morin. She's joining us here on this program at 5 o'clock. Her daughter, just awful to say it, tragically raped and murdered by an illegal alien in Harford County, Maryland. She testified today. Let me see if I can share. I want to share some of this testimony with you ahead of her joining us, so you just get a sense of what she had to say. Take a listen. I can't play it in its entirety, but I'm going to play some of it for you. Take a listen.
I have before me a written statement, but it's hard for me to read off a piece of paper, so I'm just going to share from my heart.
Yeah.
My daughter, 37-year-old woman, she has 5 children. On August 5th, she went for a walk on a trail in a small town. We live in a small town in Maryland. We've walked this trail for over 25 years as a family, so it was very familiar, very safe. She went for her daily run. She didn't come home that night. The next day, they went out looking for her. They found her, and I'm going to tell you what the court records have said. They found her badly beaten. She was strangled. She was raped. The medical examiner said she had bruises that blanketed her body. She had 10 to 15 head wounds, and she was stuffed into a drain pipe. I went to the funeral home because I had to decide if we could do an open casket for her, for our grandchildren, for our family. And you could tell from looking at my daughter that they had filled in all the holes with wax. They tried to straighten her broken nose and tried to align her face back the way that to look normal. And she was covered with makeup so thick it didn't even look like it was a human being. And I wasn't allowed to see from the neck down the rest of her body. This person is, we found out after an investigation, we had DNA that came off my daughter, DNA from a crime that he had committed in Los Angeles where he attacked a 9-year-old girl and the little girl's mom. It turns out that this man was an illegal immigrant from El Salvador. Tammy Nobles and I live in the same town that Tammy Nobles' daughter lives in Maryland. My daughter lived 15 minutes south of this town. An illegal immigrant, he crossed the border 3 times, was sent back. The 4th time, he was a gotaway. If they had at any time did the cheek swab for the DNA, they would have known that this person had a Interpol warrant for his arrest for murdering a woman in El Salvador, which is why he was fleeing to America. After he murdered my daughter, he stayed in the same town where he murdered her, continued to work in restaurants, and changed his appearance. And we did a nationwide search. We did flyers, we did commercials, we've done everything, interviews, everything we could to keep her story alive, to tell the horrible thing that happened to my daughter. I wish there was a way to show you pictures of her and what she looked like, what the crime scene looked like. It's the most brutal crime that has happened in Maryland that they can even remember. Her children are having a hard time. All of us as a family are having a hard time. We have nightmares. And I want to tell you another story. This story happened, I'll make it really short, in 1975. There was a 14-year-old girl who was abducted from her house by a criminally insane man. She was kidnapped. She walked 60 miles towards the Canadian border with this man. No food, no water, walked through the woods. At night, she was raped multiple times. The parents and the police did not expect to find this girl, and if they did not expect to find her alive. I'm that teenager, and I can tell you that what I suffered as a teenager at the hand of a criminally insane man is nothing compared to the horrors that my daughter suffered. And it's because of these open borders. And I realize some of you are disinterested in this because you just think it's a partisan thing. But these are American people. These are American families. These are our children. And pretty soon they will be our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. We need to close the borders. If I can survive a crime from an American citizen, these people that are coming over the border, if they're coming over illegally, it's because they have something to hide. Those that come here legally, they're doing the due process, which is necessary to protect them and to protect us. If they're coming over illegal, it's because they're hiding something.
Patty Morin, who you just heard, will join us today at 5 o'clock. We'll have a conversation with her. Man, that's heavy. It's 4:21.
Washington's best way to wake up. O'Connor and Company with Larry O'Connor. Weekday mornings from 5 to 9 on WMAL.
All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Justin calling in from Wilmington, North Carolina on line 4. Justin, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, good afternoon, Vince. I'm
Yes, sir.
still disturbed by that story, you just read.
Patty Morin and talking about her daughter and her own life. It's just overwhelming.
Horrible. It makes what I have to say seem less important, but what I have to say is important too. What happens to that town in Ohio when 20,000 illegal immigrants have 20,000 children within a few years, anchor babies?
Yes.
And the property taxes go up on everybody in that town by what, 30%? Can they afford to live there anymore?
Yeah, and in fact, 20,000 new people in a town like that, already housing costs are skyrocketing because of that. And the health clinic in the town has been overwhelmed. They went from 115 patients to 1,500 between 2021 and 2023 over these last 3 years. And that's a 13-fold increase in the number of patients. So their whole town, their whole system's overwhelmed.
This is a criminal economic invasion against the citizens. It's really criminal. The DHS should change their name to the Department of Homeland Invasion.
Yeah, or insecurity.
It's economic invasion. We cannot afford.
Yeah,
it's invasion against the citizens.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
It is awful. What's happening is the people who are in power right now are committing atrocities on their own people. And whether you want to listen to Patty Morin say it or anybody else, this is despicable, Justin. And I think the point you make really touches on that. Thank you for the call, as always.
Thank you.
That's Justin calling in from Wilmington, North Carolina. In a moment, we're going to talk to Rob Bluey, who runs a great organization, a real news organization called the Daily Signal. He is present in Philly tonight for that debate. We'll find out from him right now what's happening in the hours ahead of time and what he expects to take place on that debate stage as Kamala Harris finally is expected to have an unscripted moment. That is, of course, unless ABC scripted it already. I guess we'll see.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Well, good afternoon to you. It's 4:35. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up at the top of the hour, we will be joined by Patty Morin. That's 5 o'clock. She's the mother of Rachel Morin. Patty just testified before Congress today about how she lost Rachel to an illegal alien who attacked and murdered her, and how she'd like to help get this country back on track now. Patty's got a lot to say. We'll discuss it at 5. And then at 5:30, Curtis Houck is here from Newsbusters. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. What looks like is the only debate between President Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris is set to take place tonight. That's because I don't think Kamala Harris wants a second debate at all. It'll take place tonight at ABC News with the broadcast this evening, although that feed is being shared, which is why you will be able to hear it right here on WMAL starting at 9 p.m. this evening. And it is taking place at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. And one wonders, will Kamala Harris finally read the Constitution while she's there? Let's ask our next guest, Rob Bluey. He's the president and executive editor of the Daily Signal. He will be in attendance tonight covering all of this. Rob, good to have you with us, sir.
Well, thank you, Vince. It's great to be with you today.
And I'm sorry, just to be clear, are you going personally or is somebody else from the Daily Signal going to be there?
I am here. I am here in Philadelphia at the Philadelphia Convention Center, which is a few blocks away from the Constitution Center. This is where they have put what I can best guess is about 1,000 journalists who have seats in the room. It's a massive room, and then there's a spin room that's right adjoining it. We've already had one campaign surrogate swing by, and it's going to be an eventful night for sure.
Yes. So do you think while you're there, just you'll have to speculate because they're not even letting you in the building at the Constitution Center. Do you think Kamala Harris will read the Constitution while she's there?
I certainly hope so. After I'm done talking to you, I'm going to take a walk over there and see what the scene is just a few blocks down the street. But it's quite unusual, Vince. I covered my first debate 20 years Bush-Kerry in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And I remember during that debate, I could actually go into the room and see the candidates. I know it was it was on a rotating basis, so they took a group of journalists one at a time,
Sure.
and brought you in. But this time, ABC News is not letting anybody in besides David Muir and Lindsey Davis. And of course, that was the same situation that CNN had for the June debate between Trump and Biden. So we're kind of in uncharted territory here, and perhaps tonight's debate will have as big a significance on the campaign as the last one.
And I want to remind people that was at the request of Democrats that there not be an audience in that room, because the last thing they want to do is debate their ideas in front of real American voters. So they begged their way into a situation where there would be no other people in the room except for members of the legacy press who, as you should know, biased their coverage entirely towards Democrats. The Media Research Center had some data on this week, demonstrating that all of the coverage of Kamala Harris's presidential campaign has been enthusiastically positive. And guess what they've been doing with Trump, Rob?
Well, yeah, it's just the opposite, exactly. And all the more credit to Trump for being willing to do up to 3 debates, which is traditionally what the presidential candidates do, dating back decades now. And there was a commission on presidential debates, which I had my own issues with and didn't necessarily like how they organized and moderated the debates themselves. But I think this new format where the candidates are left to negotiate themselves, and in this case, Harris is refusing to do those 2 other debates, I think the American people are going to be cheated out of an opportunity to actually pin her down on policy issues, ask her the tough questions that she's avoided by skirting media interviews and other things. So I think the ultimate loser here is going to be the American people, because they will not get a full perspective on who Kamala Harris is.
Yeah, well, we will see tonight. I think people were pleasantly surprised by the CNN debate with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. That's mostly because the moderators didn't make themselves the story. They asked questions to both Trump and Biden. Biden self-immolated on stage. The rest is history. We'll see tonight what ABC looks like. Now, Rob, when we originally booked you to do this interview, my understanding was that ABC was actually blocking the Daily Signal from even being in attendance, not in the debate hall, as you've pointed out, but instead down the street. Can you just walk us through that saga? What happened?
Yes, absolutely. So, again, in this particular case, ABC News, because they are the hosts, the broadcasters, they are in charge of the credentials and who gets access to the spin room and the media filing center. Now, they had a deadline, which the Daily Signal submitted its credential application prior to the deadline, did everything right, and then was notified on Friday morning at 12:40 a.m., by the way, that we were denied a credential. So, of course, I shared this on X, and then everybody was outraged by what was happening and expressing their disappointment in ABC News. And by 6 o'clock that evening, we had a completely different situation on our hands. I received an email from ABC saying that they had found room in this massive convention center for the Daily Signal to have a seat. And so that's why I'm here today. But Vince, I tried to make the most of my trip to Philadelphia. This morning I was out with some of the field staff from AFP Action who were going door to door in support of Dave McCormick, who is the Republican Senate candidate here in Pennsylvania. And, as my good friend Selena Zito said, when you're in a room of these elite journalists, oftentimes there's groupthink. And so we want to do our best, just like I know you do, to talk to everyday Americans about what's on their minds.
Well, sure. In Pennsylvania, that really is the critical state in the eyes of so many election watchers. They're saying, well, so as goes Pennsylvania is very likely to go the election. What did you see this morning?
Well, it was very interesting. First of all, in the section of Bucks County I was in, didn't see a single, the neighborhood we walked, there was not a single Kamala Harris sign or Tim Walz sign now, that or Bob Casey sign for that matter, who's the incumbent senator from Pennsylvania. Now, that's just anecdotal, but the houses that the AFP Action staff knocked on were generally supportive of the Republican candidates. There is, from what I sense, perhaps a tiring of politics already. Driving up 95, every single billboard seems to have a Trump or Harris campaign ad on it. Yep. And of course, even in the mailboxes, you can see all the flyers for the different politicians running. So Pennsylvania is a critical state. If Kamala Harris doesn't win here, I don't necessarily see a path for her to win the presidency. And of course, Donald Trump won here in 2016, and he's hoping to repeat that again.
Have you turned on a television by any chance to see what the advertising looks like there? Any room for Lucky Charms commercials, or is it all political advertising?
It's interesting. I've not turned on the TV yet, but I did see one billboard that was advertising for people who were, getting crowded out from all of the political ads. Because if you're a small business and you count on that kind of word of mouth advertising to promote your business, it's a tough situation. Definitely, I think by the time November rolls around, the people of Pennsylvania will be tired of politics, but that just goes to show how closely divided not only our country is, but this state is, and what a critical role it will play in the outcome of the election.
It's really essential. What are you looking forward to tonight, Rob Bluey, in this debate? Kamala Harris, Donald Trump squaring off.
Well, I think that the big thing will be, of course, we're just a couple of days since Kamala Harris has posted finally some policy issues on her website. And so I think this is going to be the first time over the course of 90 minutes that we'll actually hear her articulate perhaps why she flip-flopped on some of the issues that she took a position on in 2020, where she stands today, how she's going to try to differentiate herself from Joe Biden and some of his unpopular policies, particularly on the economy and immigration. And then I say on the Trump side, Donald Trump has had his up and down performances in past debates. I think this is Trump's opportunity to paint a contrast between what he did during his 4 years in office and what's happened over the course of the last 3.5. And particularly, I think if Trump can highlight personal finances and the fact that Americans aren't better off today than they were under his administration, that could be a winning point for him. Also,
I really hope President Trump succeeds tonight in pointing to the tether that connects Kamala Harris to Joe Biden. And the media is making it out to be like, oh, Trump is trying to tether her to him. No, they are joined at the hip. She's the vice president of the United States. What a ridiculous thing. And she is about as impactful as any vice president has been in American history, especially because she's the number one on the list of tie-breaking votes in the Senate. No other vice president has done that. Those votes have led to dramatic increases in the cost of living here in the United States for Americans everywhere. So the problems that existed for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris owns a huge percentage of those. The key tonight, to me, Rob, is to see President Trump make clear to the American people that she has been in power and she's used it poorly.
Well, Vince, that's a great point. And I think, unfortunately, for Trump, many Americans don't necessarily associate her with some of those unpopular, particularly economic policies of Joe Biden, even though, as you point out, I mean, she's been in the room. She's been the last one in the room, as she herself has said, for a lot of those decisions. And what we've seen in polling is that where there used to be a double-digit gap and a huge Trump lead over Biden, that narrowed down just to single digits. And so I think you're absolutely right. It's incumbent upon Trump tonight to try to paint that picture of how Harris is responsible for some of those decisions that Biden has made over the course of the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, one of the big numbers out of that New York Times survey this weekend was that some meaningful percentage of voters say they need to know more about Kamala Harris. Well, tonight, President Trump has a mission. Let them know more. You tell them all about her while you're up there. Rob Bluey, have you had a chance to go over to the debate venue? Is ABC allowing people to see what it will look like in there?
I don't believe we're allowed to get into the debate venue, but Vince, I'm going to take a walk over there after we're done with the interview, and I'll certainly share on X and other places what I see.
Yeah.
My understanding is that it'll be a pretty tight-knit group that's allowed in the room. I remember after the CNN debate, the White House Correspondents Association was actually upset that CNN would not allow even some pool journalists in the room to observe what was taking place, given the historical significance of it. And so I expect that it'll be a lighter presence. I will tell you, the police presence over here at the convention center is quite large.
Well, and just to be clear about what you're talking about, there are pools, meaning there are tons of outlets who want access to these candidates, but sometimes given the small confines that a candidate might enter, not everybody can go in at once, obviously, logistically. So they'll send one reporter in who will represent the rest of the press, jot down what's happening, send it out via email, let everybody know. And when it's the vice president of the United States, there's constantly pool reporting going on. A reporter who's following from one of the news outlets who's going to keep track of what she's up to. And as you point out, CNN blocked that from even happening during their debate. ABC, thank goodness, is allowing somebody in to document some of those scenes that you might not see on camera, which is excellent news. Rob, there's another piece here that I find kind of interesting. Kamala Harris is going to have a shorter podium tonight than President Trump. And I guess the reason for this is because she's shorter. She's 5'4". Trump is 6'3". So they've actually built the hardware that they're standing behind. Technically, it's a lectern that they're standing behind to accommodate their height. Do you think that's going to be a weird look on television tonight?
Potentially. This just goes to show the extent that the Harris team went in terms of negotiating the rules, just down to the height of the podium, as you indicated. Obviously, I think historically we know that taller individuals tend to perform better in politics. I mean, I don't have the data on me offhand, but I know anecdotally that seems to be the case. And standing next to Donald Trump, she will look quite short. So yeah. I think that they're trying to do everything in their power to try to give her an advantage. And that came down to this debate over muting or unmuting the mics. Of course, ABC ended up deciding that they would keep Trump's mic muted and her mic muted when the other candidate was talking. I think that's advantage Trump, probably. But yeah, all sorts of rules that went into this. And by the way, we should note that it was really first the Biden campaign and then the Harris campaign that were so insistent on this. It doesn't seem that Donald Trump really cares one way or the other.
Doesn't.
He's willing to show up and have the conversation regardless of what the rules.
I know, and that is something that should tell voters a lot. And on podium placement, which was one of my favorite stupid topics, when Biden came into that first debate with Trump, apparently Biden won the coin toss, and so his campaign, you get to choose one or the other. You get to choose whether you give the final statement at the debate or you get to choose your podium position. The Biden people chose podium position like morons, and we were served all of these news stories about how that was such an impressive decision because of how people psychologically judge the candidates based on what side of the stage they're standing on. It was so moronic, Rob Bluey. And then, of course, Biden just blew up on the debate stage, and nobody cares what side of the debate stage he was on. In this debate tonight, apparently Trump won the coin toss, and he once again chose to give the final statement, which is obviously the one you want, isn't it?
Oh, I would say so. I mean, why wouldn't you want the final word? I mean, that's what the American people will be left with at the end of the evening, of course. And again, remember during that first debate, Biden complaining afterward. Well, during the debate, they came out with the excuse that he had a cold. And then after the debate, he was complaining that Trump was talking when he was trying to deliver his answers. So, these little things, as you noted earlier, Vince, that you don't necessarily get to see on camera, which is why it's so important to have journalists in the room. And, yeah, I think that those are the little things that Trump has probably picked over the course of 6 debates that he's going to excel at tonight.
I forgot all about them saying in the middle of the debate that he had a cold. That was hilarious. And so I can't wait. If Kamala performs poorly tonight, I can't wait to find out what excuse they offer up midway through the debate. Oh, she hit her head on the way in. Okay. Hey, Rob Bluey, have fun tonight from your vantage point, whatever it ends up being. Thank you very much. Good to talk. That's Rob Bluey, the president and executive editor over at the Daily Signal. Fantastic news site. Now it's 4:50.
Mark Levin, weekdays 6 till 9 p.m.
on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
On the subject of Kamala Harris's stature, the New York Times has an entire piece on this subject today, headlined, "Trump mocks Harris's height, but her fans see a certain stature." What? They say with Tuesday night's debate approaching Kamala Harris's height, she is 5 feet 4 1/4 inches tall, says the New York Times. Look at them, giving her a 1/4 inch to make her feel better. Came up over the weekend as a potential issue during the event. The former president, Donald J. Trump, whose reported height is 6'3". You see, they treat Trump with contempt and then give Kamala Harris a 1/4 inch. Called attention to their size discrepancy on his social media platform, Truth Social. Quote, "No boxes or artificial lifts will be allowed to stand on during my upcoming debate with Comrade Kamala Harris," he wrote. He added such accommodations, which he claims Michael Bloomberg once demanded, would be, quote, "a form of cheating." Ms. Harris has not commented on whether she has made a request for any sort of lift, but seeing the candidates together may make many who tune in for the debate aware of her actual height for the first time, a reality that could have been previously masked by what some call tall energy. What? So the New York Times says that Kamala Harris has tall energy. These are the same people who think that men can be women. That if you're short, you're actually tall. I identify as tall. Sure you do. Ron's in Northwest D.C. is on line 3. Ron, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Thank you for taking my call, Vince.
Sure.
It seems like every time I listen to you, I come away a little bit smarter.
Thank you for that.
You're very informative. I've learned a lot from you through the time you've been here. God bless Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from him, but I think I've learned more from you in your short time. But
boy, that's high praise. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you for informing the public. And God, I wish you were a replacement for CNN. We wouldn't have the problem now. People do not know what Kamala's really like.
No, they have no idea.
No, they do not. And that's the problem. I'm a black man. I'm 63 years old. And I listen to some of the black stations in this area. I can't listen to it too much because they politicize everything. And they're propping up Kamala.
Uh-huh. Oh, so they're all in. You say the black stations in D.C. are all in on Kamala?
Yes.
Interesting.
She did a recipe. I think the one time I turned on, they talked about her doing a recipe. And the lady on there says, well, people don't see her as being black enough. But after this recipe, I bet you think different.
What?
What?
What is that? That's so crazy. Oh, Ron, we live in a crazy world. Hey, I'm so grateful for your listenership, Ron. I really appreciate that. And we'll keep trying our best here. We just want to tell the truth. That's all. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, sir. Stay with us. I've got, on the other side of the news, we're going to be joined by the mother of Rachel Morin, Patty Morin. She just testified before Congress today. She's got a lot to say to you coming up.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
Making sense of the news.